we're constantly going to be comparing ourselves to someone else's step 10.
Yeah.
If that's all we're seeing is step 10 and we're not seeing those other steps, it's going to be a lot harder to think like this is possible for me, because we're like, well, it's already happened for them. So of course they can go back and say it was hard, but look where I am now. But I want to be that person that's like, okay, come with me on this journey and we can do it together.
Human Design reveals who you are energetically and who you came here to be. I'm Dana, Human Design Specialist.
And I'm Haley, the Human Design Newbie. Listen in as we explore how leaning into your authentic self is your ultimate path to success. Welcome to the Human Design Hive podcast. Let's get into it.
Hello, and welcome back to the Human Design Hive podcast. I am your host here, Dana. Glad to have you here. And today at the start of this episode, I am going solo. However, I'm going to be joined very quickly by a new friend of mine. But I just wanted to hop on quick and say hello and take a moment to talk to you a little bit about my guest that's coming up and why I thought it would be interesting to have a little chat with her. So as a podcaster, and as I try to grow this podcast, and I guess maybe it's my line 4 as well, I find myself in certain groups on Facebook, people that are into podcasting, entrepreneurship, things like that. And you get to know each other and you also get introduced to people. And sometimes people are looking for podcast guests and vice versa, or guesting opportunities. And in one group, I was introduced to Kristen and I was immediately drawn to her energy. And she was looking for opportunities to get on other podcasts to help grow her podcast, because that's what we do. And what stood out to me, maybe it's her line 4 energy as well. She's a 4/6 manifesting generator. But I just found it very interesting, the work that she's done in the past and what she is doing and what she plans on doing, which we're going to share with you today in the little chat that we have. But as I prepared for it, I was looking at her chart. She doesn't have much background in human design, so we talk about it a little bit, but not too much, because I know it can be confusing if someone's never seen their chart. But in retrospect, going back, as you listen along today, you can maybe keep in mind, like I said, she's a 4/6 profile, and she is just in the phase of going up on the roof, which you will see that she's done lots of things in her life up until this point, and she is kind of taking a more observatory position now in life, which is awesome. And she also is highly individual. She has almost the entire integration network in her design, and she's a single definition. So she definitely carries a presence about her that is highly individual, and I think it just really, as you listen to her talk and what she wants to talk to others about, you'll kind of get a fuller picture of how that expresses itself. So I don't know, just a little food for thought there as we dive into the episode. I really, really enjoyed this conversation with her. She has such a fresh take on this whole personal development world and how we view it, and how we can maybe open it up to more people, make it more accessible to more people. And I just really enjoyed the conversation with her. So I hope you do as well. And let's just get into it. So hello and welcome, everybody. We're so glad to have you here today on the podcast, and have another special guest with me here today. My guest is Kristen Maes, and she is a homesteader from Wisconsin. And she's also the host of the Live Your Passion podcast, which has recently had a name change. So I'm sure she'll tell us a little bit about that, I hope. And on her podcast, she shares a lot of stories of personal growth and development, manifestation, mindset, spirituality, business, all the stuff that I jive on too. So I'm really excited to talk to you about it and your journey, and maybe a little bit about human design. And so welcome, Kristen. So nice to have you here.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Now, full disclosure, we don't know each other that well. We've been in touch a few times. We did meet in a mutual group on Facebook, and I did notice you a little while ago too, because of your you also make jewelry. Do you still make jewelry?
I do, yeah.
Yeah, because I had a previous business doing that as well, but mine was with gemstones and all the healing properties and Reiki infused and all that other stuff. So that always stands out to me when people are making jewelry. But um, anyways, why don't I gave everybody a little brief description of you there? Why don't you, if you don't mind, tell me how you like to see yourself and maybe where it is you started, and we'll just go from there.
Sure. Yeah. So my name is Kristen Maes. I'm a homesteader from Wisconsin. And I always knew that I wanted a business of some sort, but I didn't know what it was. So it took me a long time to really get into that and figure out what I wanted. Cause for a long time it was just, bouncing from job to job or like bouncing from one thing to another. Cause I'm like multi-passionate too. So I'm like, I have all these interests, but in the past, it was like, how do I make money? And it was like, I gotta have a job. So then I would try all these different jobs, and then I hated all of them. And I started bartending when I was 21, and this was the first time I was making any sort of money at all. So then I just stopped worrying after a while because I'm like, okay, this isn't so bad. I work 20 hours a week and I make more than I would working a 9 to 5. So let's just stop worrying for a while and just live my life.
Mhm.
And then that's when I just started getting really interested in plants.
Mhm.
Um I get a little obsessive over things. So with plants, it was like I wanted to know all the different plants in the entire world and how to use them and how to grow them. And so,
Mhm. Big list.
yes, I went down this like rabbit hole of I want to know everything about everything.
Mhm.
And so yeah, it started with plants, and then I was like, okay, so now I need room to grow these plants. So I did grow up in in the country here and there. We moved a lot, but my favorite memories were in the country. So I did know that I wanted to have my own country home. I didn't know what kind of farm I wanted or if I wanted a farm. And once I started doing all this research on plants, I'm like, I need some room to grow these plants. And I was with my husband at the time, and I told him I just want a place in the country where I can grow these plants. And so then we did. We got a place that it's 2 acres, so it's kind of small, but it's laid out in a way where I can have pretty much anything I want on it. And then I went way too crazy, way too fast. I planted a it was probably like 2,500 square feet for my vegetable garden alone. And then I added all the animals I could possibly add. And it was very, very difficult the first 2 years, but I'm not a quitter. And I knew this was what I wanted. So I'm like, I'm going to keep doing this. And then I started realizing that I got very depressed because I was, working so hard and feeling like I was getting nowhere, using all our money, putting all our money into the farm. I had to start working less so that I'd have more time on the farm. So I was bringing in less money, and I was like, okay, I need to do something more than just this. So then I did scale back on the farm, and I kept the things that I really wanted to keep. Like I did plant a bunch of fruit trees, so I wasn't gonna just go and rip those out. I did make a smaller garden, and then I realized that I wasn't doing anything for my own personal development. Like I was doing things that I enjoyed, but like to an extreme where like I couldn't even enjoy it anymore. It was just work.
Mhm.
And I was always just listening to like old TV shows that I've already watched, like just put them on my phone on Hulu or Netflix or whatever while I was doing stuff. And I was like, this isn't really helping me. So then I was like, and I've heard of podcasts. Why don't I start listening to some podcasts that are actually going to help me? So then I just searched for inspirational podcasts. And the first one that came up was Your Highest Self by Zahara Rose. So I started listening to that. And then she was interviewing other people. And I was like, oh, this one sounded good. I want to listen to her. So then I started listening to Don't Keep Your Day Job. And that was a lot about, how to quit your day job and live a life that you're passionate about. And I was like, this is exactly what I need to hear every day. So
Mhm.
I listened to it every day for about 2 years. And I was like, you know what, I've been so stuck in research mode and so stuck in, I have to keep doing what I was doing because otherwise I'm a failure,
Mm-hmm.
and I realized, like, after listening to these podcasts, and it was all about, just do it messy, do it scared, just do it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I decided, okay, let's just do it. I don't care what it is, let's just do it. And in the beginning, I wanted to make goat milk soap for my business. And it was more of like, back then, it was like, I want something that I can do from my farm and make enough money where I can quit my job and live comfortably. And after listening to these podcasts, it was like, okay, now I have a money mindset shift where it's like, I don't want to just be, you know, living off of what I can.
Mm-hmm.
I want to make as much money as I can so that I can do whatever I want in my life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So yeah, so I was it wasn't just about the money. It was when I started doing that, I had been researching soap making and everything related to soap, like lotions and stuff like that. I've been doing that for like 3 years, just researching it and never making anything.
Mm-hmm.
And then I realized when I started listening to these podcasts and I was like, okay, I got to take action. I finally started making soap. And then I realized after 3 years of research, I didn't even like making it. So I was like, okay, well, can I see myself doing this for the rest of my life? And the answer
Mm-hmm.
was no. So I was
Yeah.
like, all right, we're never doing that again. We're never going to sit and research for 3 years without trying it. So
Trying
then
it
I
first. Yeah.
started, yeah. And I just started trying things and started doing them. And I was like, I had raised meat rabbits in the past growing up.
Mm-hmm.
And so I decided I wanted to do that. And it didn't work out because, my husband wasn't on board with it. And then there was a lot of issues that went along with that. But when I was doing that, I realized that I didn't want to throw away any of the waste. There was so much going to waste, like the pelts, the heads, the feet, all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, why don't I start making something with this?
Mm-hmm.
And then I started making rabbit foot keychains, and then I started using the skulls and making necklaces out of skulls. And then I was
Mm-hmm.
like, this is kind of fun.
Mm-hmm.
It's different. It's weird, but I like that. Like,
Yeah.
I like
Well,
being different.
that's what stood out because it is definitely a different take on things. And, I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure you probably have a niche customer for that particular brand because I know there's a lot of people out there that right away will hear like, oh no, she's making animal jewelry, or animal bone jewelry. But like you said, you're trying to use all parts of the animals. So its life, does not go to waste, which I really appreciate that because a lot of people just have a black and white vision sometimes of keeping animals, raising animals for food or whatever. So I thought that was really, really interesting. And so as I wanted to jump in and share with you, which I'm not sure if I didn't even ask you before we got on, are you familiar at all with human design?
Not very much. I've heard of it, and I
Mm-hmm.
would be interested in learning more about it, but I don't
Okay.
know enough about it yet.
Well, of course, I asked you for your birth details to look up your chart, and I did. And so I just wanted, since we talk about that on here, to let people know that you, in human design, your energy type, you're a manifesting generator. I don't know if you've heard of any of these things before. or not.
And I know what manifesting is. I don't know what
Yeah.
manifesting generator is.
Yeah, it's a little different. But just so everybody out there listening knows, because if they've been listening for a while, they might have some insight too. So you have a profile which is called a 4/6, and you're a manifesting generator. And a lot of what you've already just shared with us really exhibits a lot of those qualities. The manifesting generator is the energy type that, because there's 5 main energy types, and there's generators, manifesting generators, projectors, reflectors, and manifestors. And it's not manifesting in the traditional sense, other than it has, I mean, it is and it isn't. We all can manifest. You know that because you talk about it all the time on your podcast, right?
Yeah.
But basically, manifesting generators are like these really fast, really energetic types in the sense that they a good use of their energy is a lot of what you're doing is this trying things out, having lots of projects going at one time, because you guys are here to really hone and master your crafts, whatever it is you decide to do. But in the meantime, you're also really skilled at finding the faster, more efficient way to get there. And so I don't know if it's your experience growing up or in the past, if you had gotten kind of any kind of feedback or pushback from those around you, as in, Kristen, you just need to stick in one direction, or Kristen, you just need to do one thing, or when are you going to find the right thing, right?
My husband's definitely always telling me, you're always changing your mind. Like, do you really
Mhm.
think this is gonna work? Yeah, it can be difficult. It
Yeah.
even myself, I'm like, I don't want to end up, like my mom who was always moving all
Mhm.
the time. She didn't know what she wanted, or you
Mhm.
know, I um I definitely went through a whole personal development journey because who I thought I was as a kid is not who
Yeah.
I am now.
None of
Like,
us.
not at all. And, well, even like in my early adulthood, I thought I was still that person. And then I realized I'm not that. And homesteading really taught me who I really am because in the past, I thought I was stupid because I didn't get straight A's. I thought that I was lazy because our house was always a mess, but we had 7 kids. I thought that I was boring because I didn't have anything that I wanted to talk about. I was very, very shy. I didn't talk to people at all.
Mhm.
And, I had all of these limiting beliefs, all of these old identities that I clung to that I was like, this is me. And then I thought that I wasn't ever going to be a hard worker. I didn't want to work, and like I didn't want a normal job. And it wasn't until, we got our homestead and I started like doing things that I enjoyed, like putting the work in on things that I enjoyed. I realized that I'm an insanely hard worker. Like that's
Mhm.
all I do is work now. And
Mhm.
I love it. But
Mhm.
it can be really tough.
It
But it's like I thought that I was a completely different person until I found my passion. I was
Yeah.
like, oh, this is who I really am.
Well, it's interesting that exactly what you said encapsulates a lot of that generator energy. So are you familiar with the like the Hindu, like the chakra system, the energy centers and all
I
that?
Yeah, I heard about it and I really want to get more into that. Like
Mhm.
like I said, I'm multi-passionate, so it's like
Mhm.
that's something that I love to learn about, but I've
Yeah.
got, like you said, a million different things on my
Right, right.
list.
Oh, there's lots of reasons for that. So lots of reasons in your design for that. And it's but what you need to know is that you're perfectly designed to be that way. That's you are an idea generator. It's like you are a very open-minded person with lots of ideas that can see things from lots of different angles, and you're designed to try some of them out. And I also want to point out that energy of like trying different things or having lots of projects. My husband's a manifesting generator as well. I'm generator. There's a little difference there. Generator's a little more slow and steady, and the like the tortoise and the hare. Manifesting generators like get there faster, but sometimes they have to go back and repeat steps because they might have gone too fast. But that's how you're designed to work, as you're designed to find these things faster and easier and make them easier for others. What I want to point out is how you said that you always thought that you were lazy or not a hard worker, all those things, right? I had the same reaction when I heard I was a generator, because our energy type, we have there's a sacral energy center in the human energy body, and that is the center for um life force, workforce, prana, sexual energy. It's all this stuff. And in our types, generator types, that is designed or defined, and what that means in human design is that we have consistent access to that energy. So like we can really work really hard. We are the builders, the workers in the world. We're the people that get our hands in the clay and like really we build things, businesses, farms, lives, relationships, whatever it is. And we have this sustainable energy source that we're actually designed to exhaust ourselves. And then at the end of the day, we go to sleep, wake up the next day, we can do it all over again. It's replenishable, right? However, when we're not doing work that we want to be doing, it can actually have the opposite effect, because we let me ask you this, we have this inborn um response. It's called a sacral response, which our gut can literally tell us yes or no. And it sometimes comes out as a uh-huh or uh-huh, uh-uh. Like when we're kids, we're more like grunters. And but it tells you, yes, I want to do this, or I don't want to do that. My no is like ugh, I don't want to do that. Does that sound correct? Do you do better with yes or
Oh,
no answers, or
absolutely. Because that was why I couldn't work a regular job. I'm like, I cannot do this. This is not me. I will
Mhm,
never be this person. And I need to
mhm,
find a different way because I won't be happy doing this.
mhm, yeah.
So yes. And the same with like school. I wouldn't do my schoolwork because I didn't care about it. So that's why I thought I was
Same.
stupid. Got C's and D's.
Mm,
But then I realized later on in life, I'm like, I'm actually really smart. I
mhm,
know how to do things other people can't do. I'm like extremely talented in different areas.
mhm.
Not like in a bragging way, but it's like
No,
I've
yeah.
learned that I can do whatever I put my mind to, but I have to be passionate about it.
Absolutely, because yeah, generator, because that, I mean, if you think about it, how the whole world was built, civilization was built, and like 70% of the people on the planet have this energy that we are meant to like, do the work. But that response there, that yes or no response is there to let us know if it's a correct use of our energy. And you also, you have different indicators in there that shows that you're definitely meant to follow that response, because a lot of your power, a lot of your magnetism comes from that center. And if you are doing things that don't light you up, like you said, it's just going to feel like a slog, and it's just not, you're going to feel like the way you were feeling. And I get that. And I'm older than you are, and I didn't realize, I envious of people who are learning this earlier in life, because I spent way too many years doing things I didn't want to be doing, for the same reasons you've expressed before. Like in your podcast, I was listening to some of your episodes, and you know, feeling that it's scary to quit your job. You got to make the money. What am I going to do? And so um I just lost my train, which is not
I do it
unusual.
all the time.
But anyway, so okay, you were sharing about the jewelry and stuff. And so what I wanted to talk to you what I want to talk to you next is about your podcast. Now I think you were getting there, right? About how you started that you just wanted to finally get into that. You want to share that?
Yeah, of course. So for the podcast, it actually started with the YouTube channel because so I had started from listening to these podcasts about how to quit your job, like how to figure out what your passion really is. And I was like, okay, I figured out my passion is homesteading, and I decided that I wanted to teach. I wanted to teach homesteading, and I was like, this could be where I could make my money. I could teach like all the different things, and then I could start a course after like growing a YouTube channel. Because I heard about online courses, and I even took Amy Porterfield's class about like course on how to create
Mhm.
online courses. And when I was doing that YouTube channel, I was like, I should also start a podcast. And so I started a podcast about homesteading. And I just couldn't really get into the podcast with the homesteading stuff because I'm like, okay, I'm already doing that over here. And I have so many more ideas for videos than I do for just talking about homesteading.
Mhm.
And so it was a real struggle in the beginning for the podcast because I was like, I have no idea what I'm going to talk about. Like I can talk about this, but if it's boring to me, it's going to be boring to you. So it's like I have fun showing it on video. I'm like, I can show you how to butcher an animal. I can show you how to, grow carrots, but I'm not just going to sit and talk about it.
Mhm.
I'd rather show you.
Right.
So the reason why I started the podcast as a homesteading podcast was because I was like, okay, I've already got a product business. I've already got a YouTube channel. And now I'm going to have a third thing with a different name. And I was like, I have too many different business names going on. And so I was like, well, let's just do it as a homesteading podcast. At least I'll have a podcast. And then it started to kind of like go weeks where I wouldn't post an episode. And I was like, you know what I really want to talk about is personal development because I would have like these episodes where I would talk about like my personal journey and my personal development. And I loved those episodes and I would post them. And then the next week I'm like, "Oh, well, I already did a personal development one last week. I don't
Mhm.
want this like to go veer off. And then I realized I'm keeping myself small by telling myself that I can't do that. So then I decided, you know what? The homesteading thing, it's great, but that's not what I want to talk about every day. I want to talk about the personal growth. And I want this to be more like my journal where I can work through my own struggles and show you. I realize I want to show people that if you really believe in yourself, you can do anything.
Mhm.
And what better way to do that than show it from the beginning of my journey where I haven't really accomplished a lot, but
Mhm.
I believe in myself. And if I can show the beginning to success, then you can see the whole journey and
Mhm.
realize she said that she was going to do it right in the beginning. And here she is 5 years later, and she's done it.
And I appreciate that about your pod. I mean, you even say it in your, introduction to beginning entrepreneur, because so much stuff out there, is from, and this has been a kind of bone of contention for myself too, is that there's so much out there that like all these voices are these people that are like, I can help you 10x this, 6x that, and it's just like all this six-figure talk, and I don't feel it to be that empowering at times. It's like, because not everybody wants that. Not everybody wants to, have the $10 million lifestyle, because for one, it could really just destroy the rest of their lives, but not meaning that if they're not getting there in the right way,
Right.
if they're burning themselves out. But I mean, I've come to realize that, I mean, yes, I want to do the same thing. I'm in the beginning stages, same as you are. And I held myself back for a long time because I wasn't sure, exactly what to talk about until human design came along. And I am peppering in different things besides just human design. So I get that. But I mean, I just think more people feel connected to you too when you're just like honest with them and say, I want to show you this is possible as I'm doing it, instead of all these people that are already have supposedly done all these great things. But you know what I'm saying? It's like
Oh, exactly. Because when I first started it, I was like, I was looking for people who were where I was and I couldn't find them. I
yeah.
was like, where are all the beginners that have podcasts or that are showing, the process? It's all people who have been doing it for 10 years. They're already on step 50 and we're on step 1. And
Mhm.
they're trying to tell us what they did 20 years ago. And it's not going to be the same thing. Not now with like the way things are now. Like things progress really fast lately with
Right.
technology and all this stuff. Like there wasn't a thing called podcast back then. There was a thing called YouTube back then. And then and yes, there's a lot of people that are like teaching how to do that stuff, but I think most of it is, yeah, like 20 years ago, I was struggling too. And like, look where I am now. But it's like, but what about like people who are in the step 1 or in the step 2 or in the step 3? Because otherwise, we're constantly going to be comparing ourselves to someone
Mhm.
else's step 10.
Yeah.
If that's all we're seeing is step 10 and we're not seeing those other steps,
Mhm.
it's going to be a lot harder to think like this is possible for me because we're like, well, it's already happened for them. So of course they can go back and say it was hard,
Mhm.
but look where I am now. But I want to be that person that's like, okay, come with me on this journey and we can do it together.
Mhm. Yeah, because it in any, and you've probably come across this notion, especially in personal development, that all you have to be is a step or two ahead of someone else. You don't have to be at the end of the line in order to help someone. You can just be a little bit further along to be able to reach back your hand and say, come with me. And I think that's really awesome what you're doing there. And I also wanted to mention, I mentioned part of your design earlier was something called profile, was a 4-6. A profile is more like what you'd be familiar with, like the sun signs or enneagram or something. It's something that really dials into your personality, but it's really like how you learn and kind of how you interact with others. And the 4 part of your profile represents, I'm a 4-1, you're a 4-6. That 4 is this very much person who is a connector, who finds their opportunities. It's called the opportunist in human design, which nobody likes that word because it makes it sound negative, but it's more of a person that's all about relationships. Like that's the really important thing to you. Does that resonate with you? Relationships?
I think relationships are something that's always been extremely hard for me, but
Mm,
something that I've always wanted. But I grew up, like I said, I was very, very shy and I didn't have a lot of friends, but I wished so badly to have friends
Mhm.
and I wanted to be in that circle, but I was so afraid of what people thought of me all the time
Mhm. Mhm.
that I just kept quiet.
Mhm.
And even kind of growing up and like getting married and having stepchildren, I do still sometimes feel like why don't I love them more or why don't I feel loved more? Like why
Mhm.
can't I just give it all? And I think I'm trying to keep myself safe. Like, okay, what if I do lose them? Then,
Mhm.
I'd be crushed if I gave them my whole heart. So I'm just gonna keep it at a distance and keep
Mhm.
myself safe. And that
Mhm.
I try so hard to get out of that. And
Mhm.
it's terrifying. And I don't know why.
Yeah.
There's I'm still doing that shadow work and trying to figure out like, okay, why am I like this?
Well, one of the so there's these 9 energy centers, and we talked about a couple of the sacral and openness, what they call openness in the chart, which I can send you a copy of your chart. I know you haven't probably even seen it. But there's going to be white centers on the chart, which are white, they're undefined, which means those are areas where the energy that is represented there is more uh, fluid. It varies depending on who you're around. It's very much areas where you take in information, energetic information, amplify it, and reflect it back to those around you. And then there's the other centers that are defined, like I told you, the sacral and a lot of these other ones that you have are consistent energies. You can rely on them to always kind of express in a certain way. They're your energies. It's what, if you think about a broadcast signal, that's what you're broadcasting out to the world. That's what we all feel from you. And then the open parts really are kind of that shadow side of you because you feel it and amplify it. So it feels more real to you, right? Because it's what you can feel more identified with. Whereas other people are like, no, Kristen, like you're so like steady and grounded and you feel solid to me. And you're like, I don't know. So one of
That would
the
be like
Hmm?
I was gonna say that'd be like those days when I'll be literally crying on the floor for like an hour and then I'll go, to work or something and everyone's like, "You look so happy today." I'm like,
Yeah.
"Thanks." But it's not
I could
true.
I could tell you a little bit about that. I think it's gonna really help you too. But so the ones 2 of the centers that you have undefined are basically the heart center. It's kind of represented in 2 separate centers in human design, but the main one, they call it the G center, is your sense of love and direction. And your G center on your chart is open and undefined, right? And so that means that you do feel a lot of that there, but you're also really good at seeing the potential in others. Like you can really see how other people see themselves. Does that resonate at all?
Yeah. I've definitely felt that. Like I do feel like I have more I guess I feel like I can read some people better than they can read
Yeah.
me, I guess,
Yeah.
or they may even better than they know
Yeah.
themselves. I'm like, "Oh, I know why you're that way." But
Yeah. But you see, it's a center of identity as well. And so it's like your identity is going to be more fluid than other people's. Like you can, be this person in this group or in this group or in this instance. There's no like one fixed identity for you. It's always going to be kind of changing. And that is the core question in that G center. What you expressed is about being loved is that's the eternal quest of this open center is will I will I be loved? Can someone really love me? Because you don't have a necessarily a fixed consistent way of experiencing yourself that way. It changes, depending on who you're around. And then the other part of that, well, I call other part center. It's its own separate center, but still that heart energy, the will center, yours is completely undefined as mine is. It's hard to explain. I know you can't see it, so I'm not going to explain it to you. But that center is all about your own self-worth and value. And could also have caused a lot of that hesitancy when you were younger. Um, but I think you're, from what I'm seeing in your podcast, what I'm hearing about you, like you are not so affected in that area really, because you are kind of claiming your own value and self worth for yourself, as we all should. And I appreciate that. Were you going to say something?
I do feel like that's changed very recently. As far as like I used to hate myself for a
Mm,
long time. And
yeah.
I went back and forth from hating myself to loving myself to hating myself again. And and I do still have times where I'm like, why am I like this? Or like I wish I was different. And I do have times where I still have self-hatred. And it's I think I do have some like mental health issues like ADHD and some other things too that I do kind of like struggle with extreme highs and extreme lows.
I know what
So
that is. I could
yeah.
tell you what that is right now. Yeah.
Okay. So,
Unless you want to finish your thought, but I can tell you it's like golden what you just said. Go ahead.
um yeah, so it was like I went through that with hating myself and loving myself and very very extreme lows, very extreme highs. And I went through that with other people too because when before I got into school at all, when I was very young, I loved people. Like I was like I when I grow up, I want to help people. And that was what I wanted to do was help people. And then I got into school and I was bullied for being shy and I started like feeling that I hated people after a while, but I also felt like the people who bullied me, it was like I at a very young age I could just feel like their pain. And I was
Yeah.
like, I know that they're experiencing pain and that's why they're
Yeah.
doing this.
Yeah, that's what you could, because literally your openness in your head, the head center, energy centers, ajna centers, you are very open-minded and you can literally tap into what people not only are thinking, but with that G center, how they feel about themselves, like you said. But I wanted to address the highs and lows because um, I mentioned that you're it's the wording is emotional manifesting generator. And so what the emotional part is we all have our own inborn innate authority, it's called in human design, which is how your body informs you how to make decisions. And we're so used to being disconnected from our bodies. We've been trying to make decisions from our minds for quite some time now, and the mind will never give you the correct answer. It'll give you options and all this other stuff, but half of the people on the planet, you, me included, are what they call emotional authority, which means one of the centers on our chart is defined the emotional solar plexus, and this is all about emotional energy, and this is a big part of your design. The emotional solar plexus operates, it's energy that operates in waves. So there's different types of energy in the chart. There's energy that pulses, everything's trying to get things moving, manifesting into the outer reality. This emotional energy it moves in waves, and it's like a mechanic wave, and everybody's is different. It's always there, it's always present, and you're either going to be in a high or a low or somewhere in between. And what we're here to learn about, especially as emotionally defined beings, is learning how to use that, manage that wave and where we are in it. And your particular, because there's different types of ways, your particular wave from your definition is this one that has high highs and low lows. It's a very moody energy. And the way to describe it is, like you said, you could just wake up one day and just feel like shit, like life sucks. Everything is, bad, or you're really sad or whatever, and not know why, really. And then you could pile on reasons why. But like,
Really.
yeah,
I
but you
just
just
went through that.
yeah, you just don't have a, and somebody says, "What's wrong?" And you're like, "I don't really know." Just like everything. Like it's just, but this is literally just how your energy is meant to work. And then when you can get really high and euphoric in a way. And what it's here to teach us is that there our decision making authority, our mantra should be, there is no truth in the now. We are designed to take our time to make decisions, because the way we feel about things will change, can change. Because if somebody brings something to you when you're in the real low, your sacral response and your emotional energy be like, ugh, or if you're super high, feeling really good, you might agree to things in the moment, that you'll regret the next day or 3 days or a month down the line. You're like, "Why did I do this?" And so, because a lot of your opportunities, a lot of how you create is all really tied to this beautiful emotional energy, and that the definition that you have in particular, that wave, like I said, it's very individual. It's a lot of very individual circuitry. You're a highly individual person, and it's very creative. And there's a lot of art and music and poetry and everything in this wave. But I love talking to people about their emotional authority because sometimes they have felt that their emotions were just like running them all the time. Does that resonate?
I want to tell you, I just went through something major like this because I've been feeling like on the really high for a long time, for probably over a year now, maybe
Mhm,
even 2 years. And I used to get like very, very down, get
mhm,
those really, really depressing states where it's like, am I ever going to be happy again?
mhm,
And I haven't had that probably since I was 26.
mhm,
When I was diagnosed with IC, which is like a bladder condition, and it was very
mhm,
painful. And but uh since like we bought our homestead and that, I was feeling like, I'm on top of the world, I'm gonna make it, I'm gonna be successful. And then all of a sudden I woke up one day just so depressed and I was
mhm,
like, life sucks. Everything sucks. My marriage sucks. And
mhm,
I was like, I even told my husband, like, maybe are we gonna get divorced? Because I was just like, I was feeling like everything was wrong. And
mhm,
this went on for like an entire month. And then I just started feeling better like 2 days ago, but I was like,
oh,
"What like, what was that? Where'd that come from?" And, like,
yeah,
I'm still kinda, like, processing that. I'm like I was literally, like, saying I wanted a divorce, like, because I was just so depressed, and I don't know where it came from. And
mhm,
so, like, then I just start spiraling, and I'm like, "Okay, why am I depressed? It could be this, it could be that, it could be all these things, like, all the things that ever go wrong in my life or my marriage," or,
yeah.
like
I can think of
and
what your mind gets into it, and it's like, I can tell you why.
yeah, and it was like, I didn't really know why, and I was trying to come up with all these reasons. I was like, "Maybe I'm better off alone," you know?
Mm,
I literally had that in my mind, and I'm like, "But if I'm alone, then I start spiraling like, oh, then I'm gonna lose the farm." I'm like,
yeah.
"Why am I thinking of this instead of that? Like, why don't I think of"
Well, it's a good thing. It's a good thing for emotionally defined people to start paying attention more to those. And I think it's easier to pay attention to your moods and how you're feeling when you're looking at it almost from the, like I said, from this mechanical perspective, like, oh, okay, this is how my energy functions, and start keeping track in a journal or a calendar or whatever, like what your mood is that day, because you might see, there might be a monthly cycle to it. There's also, you have another energetic wave which is not as uh severe as that one can be. The high, it's what's called a tribal wave, but it's really in a center connection that is more tied to um when things are happening, like in your relationships or whatever. It might feel a little, you might, so it might have just kind of compounded on top of each other. But if you start keeping track every day, like, where am I at today? And you'll start to see that as you do more and more of this personal development work, you're consistently raising your baseline vibration, basically. Because I know that you're really encouraged and working with mindset and all these spiritual and personal development tools, probably because of that, one to help you, kind of be more in control of that. Is that true? Or
Yeah, absolutely. Because when it started, like my personal development journey, it started because I was, in that depressive state for a long time and just feeling like, what is out there for me? Like, I need to learn how to be a better person and like I just needed something more than what I had. I
Mhm,
needed, I needed some spiritual connection to something that wasn't what I grew up with because that was very toxic to me. In my experience was I grew up a very strict religion, and that was part of why I hated myself because I'm like I'm not perfect enough for this religion, and So I had to go through a lot of, that stuff. And then I found my own spirituality, and then I started learning more about that. And it all started when I decided I wanted to have a business, which was when I was about 19, 20 years old. And I just started wanting to read books because I was all about research. I was all about, I want to learn. I want to learn this stuff. And I looked up business books, and what came up was personal development books. And I didn't know that at the time. I thought they were just business books. And there was like Dale Carnegie, Jack Canfield, stuff like that. And so I bought the books and I started reading them. And it just started really making sense to me. And I was like, oh, this is really cool. Let's find some more books. And then it led to podcasts. But that's where it all started, was from wanting to start a business. And then those were the books that came up. And I realized I needed those to come to me at that time.
I know a lot of people have a misconception at first that, like business and your spiritual life, or your life and your spiritual life, are separate, but you learn, I think, along your entrepreneurial journey, when you're trying to do things yourself and make it for yourself and the way you want to have your life, that you have to start digging into those things and see, okay, what is it here that I'm what am I bringing to the table? And then I love how you said that, you, because this is something that I preach all the time, you don't know whose life you're living until you question what it is you believe, because humans are designed to, just the way we rear children and bring them up. I mean, we're so impressionable in our first 7 years of life. I'm sure you've read a lot about this too, that we have no choice. We're helpless children. We just take in the environment of everybody they're around, all their beliefs, all that stuff. And unfortunately, I didn't start questioning a lot of those things till I was about your age. You have a head start on me, but yeah, and human design shows us that this is exactly what happens, is we are carrying around this conditioning, other people's beliefs. Um, some of them good, some of them not so good, some of them horrible. And until we start breaking that apart. But yeah, entrepreneurship is a huge spiritual journey, I believe.
It is. And I didn't know that until I started getting into it. And it's like my whole world has changed since I started this personal development journey. Like I've opened up my mind more. Like I was so afraid of hell when I was growing up in the strict religion. And I was like, if I question it, like that was the worst thing you could do in that religion, was to question the teachings. And I was like, if I even think for a minute that this could be wrong, or that I want to explore something else, I will go to hell. And so I wouldn't even question it. So it took me years and years to finally just find my own path. And it started, I left the church when I was 18 because I moved out, and I was like, this isn't for me. I don't want this. But I still felt bad about like not going to church. But there wasn't any certain church that really resonated with me, or like what I believed. And so I kind of went through a couple more years of just hating myself, because I was like, well, I'm a bad Christian. I'm a bad person. Like, I'm not going to church. I don't have any kind of spiritual thing right now. I don't know what I believe. And then when I felt safe enough to question it, that's when I started finding my own spiritual path. And it's not like I believe a little bit of everything. So it's not like Christianity, but it's not Buddhism, it's not Hinduism. It's a little bit of everything. I believe in like the universe and reincarnation. Then I believe in, the spirit, and I believe in energies, and I believe we're all energy, and energy has to go somewhere. So I do believe that our energy is recycled, and I kind of see it as like, so our bodies are made up of all these little atoms and cells and organs and all these things, but they all make up us. But we need all of it, but it's just one person. And I see that as like the universe is like, we're all these little cells, all these little parts, but we're all one. We're all part of this big universe.
Yeah. And that's totally, we jive, because we call it my daughter and we heard it on another podcast. They call it Gus, the God, universe, source, whatever it is you want to call it. Because I grew up, Catholic, and as soon as I got out of that, I could get out of that. And which, no, that's how you want to roll. That's fine. Some people need organized religion and some don't. But that's they call human design the science of differentiation because that's exactly what it does. It shows us how we are all uniquely, I mean, very uniquely designed. I mean, since it's based on where and when you were born, it's really what was happening in the cosmos the moment you were born and how that stardust basically informed your incarnation here. It's a very like woo way of saying it. But I think with you being in touch with nature and homesteading, you've seen the cycles of life and death and rebirth, and you notice how things in nature, you get more micro or macro. It all kind of follows this same structure, and of these little teeny pieces having to work together. And that's how I see us all too, is that, and that's what human design shows us is like, okay, this is your piece of the puzzle. And this is what you bring forth into the world. This is what we all need from you. And this is what you're here to learn. But basically, yeah, we're all part of this big whole thing that um, we have to come together, work together. We're designed to come together and work together. And so I love that you said that like that because it's totally how I see things. And I think it's funny, a lot of people that are like, and sometimes think that if you're not in some kind of organized religion, you're no longer a spiritual person. You don't believe in, all of a sudden. My mom used to ask me that all the time. She'd be like, do you still believe in God? And I'm like, yeah, just maybe not the way you do, but
Yeah. Yeah, I think that I've also started to really appreciate my upbringing because
Mm,
when I was going through this, I was so angry about the way I was brought up, and as I grew up poor as well, so like we went without a lot of things, and we had so many kids, so the house was always a disaster. So there's a lot of tension in our household,
mhm,
um, and then just like all of us just hated going to church. We hated like all of this stuff, um, and just like getting out of that, and I was so angry about it, and but now that I'm kind of like getting on the other side where I'm like, you know what, I have my own spiritual path and I'm proud of it and I love it, then I can look back and be like, you know what, I am grateful because it led me to find my own path and
right.
I needed that.
Mhm,
So I think that also like when you say, like we all have our own mission on earth, it's not all good. It's not all gonna be a good thing. Like maybe you're gonna be the person that hurts somebody and they needed to learn that lesson.
mhm,
Or like I can think of people in my life who like hurt me or were like just terrible. And then I learned a lesson from that. And then I'm like, maybe that was part of their journey. Maybe they're
mhm,
supposed to be that way.
mhm,
And it's kind of like the yin and yang. We need both of them. And we got to look at those like the bad things that happened to us or the people that were bad. It's like, yes, it was terrible, but maybe we needed something bad to happen in order to get to a better place. And we may
mhm.
not ever know what that place is that we're supposed to be. But it's just
Sorry.
the like we tend to like just start hating, the bad people or the bad things. And we've really got to look at the bigger picture. Like, what are we learning from this? How can we come back from this?
Mhm. Well, yeah, and I, th- I, th- I get this sense from you too that you take very seriously like personal responsibility for
Yeah.
your own energy, your own experience, which takes a lot of emotional intelligence and really a lot of work to get to that point because we do want to instinctually like point the other person and it's all their fault. And when you say that um, I don't it's funny because I don't think anybody sees themselves as a a villain, or the person that has to do the thing, but each person in each moment has those choice points of which direction, they're gonna go, and the only choice we have is in that scenario is how we're gonna, 1, react to it, and 2, what meaning we're gonna give to it. But,
That
what's that?
sorry. Go ahead. I was gonna say that's why I love the book. The Success Principles by Jack Canfield, it completely changed my life. Like, just the first chapter is
Mhm.
all about taking 100% responsibility for your life. And it's all
Mhm.
about that. It's all about it's not whose fault it is, but how are you going to react to that? How are you going to, like somebody cuts you off in traffic, you can go and, flip them off or whatever, or you can just be like, okay, that happened, whatever. I'm going to
Mhm.
keep singing to my radio station.
Mhm.
It can, one tiny thing can ruin your day, or you can just let it go and
Yeah.
be like, the past is the past. It's fine. You know
Yeah.
what? I'm not angry about it. So
Mhm.
that's what forgiveness is all about. It's about
Absolutely.
you. How, like, I have worked for like just the worst bosses, like terrible, terrible. And I held on to that for so long, just this anger. And I was like, you know what? This is only hurting me. Like, I need to let go of this anger and be like, look at it from, you know what? Like, I had a great job for 5 years at that time. I was making good money. And you know what? I'm done with that part of my life, and I'm glad, and
Mhm.
that's okay. Like, yes, things hurt, and yes, it was very stressful, but I got through it, and I learned that I can do
Mhm.
hard things.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's definitely a forgiveness speech, which is we I think we my belief is that we are all um destined to meet whoever we come in contact with, whether it was the person who cut you off, or it's your mother, or it's somebody you've known for 5 years or 10 years. It's like there's a reason for all of us to come together, because and then it'll show you in the chart too how we are kind of electromagnetically drawn to people for certain things. And as I said, you have this energy signature to you that is broadcasting out to the world all the time, and you may find that um, there are things in your energy that other people need from you, that it's never even a verbal communication. Sometimes it's just like being in their presence, they might gain something from you, which would be learning how to use their power, finding their voice. These kind of things are what people are going to experience around you. But I think a few things I wanted to leave you with is that, for one, I think you're a beautiful expression of your design, which I could feel that even before I brought you on. And that's why I wanted to have you here, because you definitely are living proof of following your own path and what feels right to you, and how it's been, like I said, you're at the beginning of your journey and we don't know where it's going to take you, but that you have the faith and the confidence to do that, to follow it, because it's what feels good to you, right?
Yeah.
And I think more people need to hear that, because they need to understand that you don't have to know the very end of the road in order to go down that road. You just one foot in front of the other. And it's really how you're designed. And, with that sacral response, every day you're designed to just, what is the world bringing me today? Am I going to engage? Do I want to do this? No. Yes, no. Yes, no. Like, that's literally how you're designed. And know that you having all your projects and all your ideas, that's perfect. And one other thing I wanted to mention, there is one activation in your ajna, which is like your mind, you're processing how you think. And there's a energy that's activated there that is all about, it's called a gate of ideas, which means that you are this vessel for so many ideas. They come to you from anywhere, everywhere. And just to let you know that they may not all be for you. And as a manifesting generator, that's important to hear, because you don't have to try to complete all of them. But just maybe write them down, and you might find which ones are for you over time, will stick with you, and ones that aren't, maybe you'll run into somebody and you'll be like, oh, I have an idea for you, or I have one for you. So you could be the sharer of ideas as well. Do you find that's
Oh,
true?
absolutely, 100%. Like I said, I get obsessed with things, so I I literally find every thing that I can do in that area. So it's
Mhm.
like plants. I was like, okay, how do I grow this? Where can I grow this? How do I use it in this type of cooking or like medicinal properties? And then when I started doing, like jewelry and art with animal bones, it's like I tried to find like every different thing that I could do with them. And so I do like it's a blessing and a curse where it's like I can go crazy with it, but I can get so many ideas. And I do start to run with some of the ideas, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I can see now in my husband, because he's a manifesting generator. It was one of those things that used to kind of annoy me, because he is very fast and he moves fast, and he shifts gears really fast. It takes me a couple more beats to shift gears, but now I can see that's just his energy. And now I so appreciate all the different projects he has going on all the time, because now I know that, oh, that's just how he needs to do things. That's how he's going to rest at the end of the day, is if he's been just really busy, doing things he's interested in, not slugging through someone
I
else's
totally get that.
agenda.
My husband has that too, where he gets frustrated with me because of all of my projects. And I totally get that. And I've gone through times where I'm like, oh, I wish he would just understand. But I also I check in with myself and I'm like, okay, he can't understand because he's not the same way I am. And that's okay. And it doesn't mean that he's being unsupportive. And it doesn't mean that he hates what I do. It doesn't mean that he hates me. It just doesn't understand the way I think, because we don't think the same way. And that's totally fine. As long as at the end of the day, we still love each other. We still support each other. It's just, it can be very hard, and it can feel like it's not supportive, but that's not what it is. It's just, we don't think the same way.
Yeah. No, totally. That's a big lesson. So, as we unfortunately come to a close here, I wanted to ask you, with the podcast, and you're starting to do interviews and speaking more about what you want to speak about, where do you see yourself? What do you have hopes for, or where do you want to take this?
Yeah. I kind of want to go back to what I said before about when I was a kid. Before I got into, society and all that stuff, I thought my initial thought was I want to help people. And then for years and years, I was like, oh, I hate people. And I just hated people. And I didn't want to be around people. I'm very introverted. I have a lot more comfort being by myself. And then it wasn't until I found my passion and found what I loved doing that I started talking about it. And my energy was vibrating at a higher frequency. And so people were excited about my energy because, I was excited. And then I realized that, what? I do love people and I do want people to succeed. It was just that I didn't have a way to express that before. And now I'm finding ways where I want to help people in this way. And I needed to go through all that to get to this place. And the way I want to help people is to show them that you don't have to live a life that you hate, that you don't have to live in the society that everybody tells you you need to live in. You don't have to do the 9 to 5. You don't have to get married and have kids right away. You don't have to do all of the things that everybody else says you have to do. You don't have to go to college right away. You can do whatever you want. And I want to show people that the world is so much bigger than what they see. So that's where the podcast is going, that I'm like, this is my way of showing up for other people and not just me. So I want to show people that you can do whatever you want with your life. And it really all starts with personal development. So that's where I decided to go with that. And in the beginning, it was like, I was like, oh, I'm just copying the other people I'm listening to, or, I don't know as much about this as these people do. And then I realized, you know what? I'm drawn to this for a reason, and I need to do this because it keeps pulling me in. I keep coming back to it, and I need to do it.
Yeah,
So
because
that's where I'm going.
we can get in a bubble and think, like you said, oh, everybody else has already said this, or they're talking about this, or I'm going to sound like someone else, because we get so into it and we love it and we want to share it. And then we think everybody knows this. And then if I ever try to have a conversation, with, somebody I meet in town or somebody at work, you realize, oh no, people don't all think this way. They need to hear more. And I think the time is right. The time is finally, like, we are reaching that tipping point. I think we're already kind of tipping where more people are thinking this way. And I think I heard it from, gosh, I can't remember. I think it's Denise Duffield Thomas. Have you heard of her? The lucky bitch, and she runs the money boot camp or all this money mindset and all this stuff. But she had a great blog post once about, you don't have to be the you don't have to be the authority, the expert. You can be a contributor. Like, you can talk about whatever it is you want to talk about, because your voice adds, that dimension to it that somebody else hasn't before. And clearly this is what I believe too, because I'm trying to, highlight to everybody that they do have their own unique way of doing everything. And everything you said, I completely agree with. You don't have to have I've never really had a 9 to 5. I did it for 2 years. It was awful. My husband and I always either work for ourselves, and I can't always tell you what we're going to do next year. I don't know. And I know a lot of people, that puts a panic in them. They're like, and I'm like, it'll work out. We'll figure it out. We always have, we'll figure it out. And so I love that you are lending your voice and your expertise and your perspective to that same message of, like, you can do this. It's okay. And not only you can do this, I'm doing it right here with you. So I think that's really awesome. And so I really, really, really appreciate you being here today. And I really hope to keep in touch with you, talk to you some more, because I think I could keep talking to you for a while.
I'm like, I hate that this is ending, because this is a really good conversation, and I could keep going. I'm like, oh, well,
we could. Yeah. Do you have anything else you want to share before we go?
Yeah. One more thing. We kind of talked about this a little bit, but you do not need to be the expert. And when I didn't know this until I took Amy Porterfield's class on how to create an online course, it was the first thing she said: you only need to know 10% more than the beginner. And before that, I always thought I couldn't do something unless I was an expert at it. Like, I couldn't teach something unless I was an expert. I couldn't show up on YouTube. I couldn't have a podcast unless I've been doing it for 10 years. And now I'm realizing, you know what? I have so much to say right now, so I'm going to say it right now. So whatever you do in your life, start now. Stop thinking that it needs to be perfect before you start, because you're never going to start if you're waiting for it to be perfect.
No, I think that was perfect, what you just said. So we'll wrap it up there. I want to thank you so much for being here today, Kristen, and everybody check out her podcast. As I said, it's called Live Your Passion Podcast. You'll find lots of good nuggets on there. And thank you so much for being here, Kristen.
Thank you so much.
Well, you made it all the way to the end of today's episode, so you must have liked what you heard. If you did, make sure you subscribe so you never miss an episode, and perhaps leave us a good review. And if you know someone who wants to dig into all things human design with us, make sure you share the Human Design Hive podcast with them. We'd really appreciate it. Thanks for listening.